Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's February 23rd, 2024 program, Youthline, bringing peer-to-peer support to every youth. My name's Andrew Calick, and I am City Club's president. We're coming to you from our home at the 5th Street Market in the heart of downtown Eugene, and it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our speakers and to all of you joining us in person, online, and over the radio. For 3 decades, the City Club of Eugene has remained dedicated to its founding mission to build community vision through open inquiry. In accordance with our mission and purpose, we hope to connect people throughout our community and across generations, identities, experiences, and perspectives. You are invited this week and every week to join us in this effort, to share your wisdom, learn something new, and take active steps to make a difference in this city and region we all love. Of course, we cannot do this work alone, so a special thank you this morning to our Platinum Community and Diamond sponsors. The Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, serving as a catalytic leader in creating a vibrant and diverse economy that drives economic opportunity and well-being. Kaiser Permanente, which exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. More information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health has been proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond as your hometown healthcare partner for more than 80 years. The Peace Health mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. The AARP of Oregon is a trusted and positive force for social change, using the experience and leadership of volunteer members to benefit all Oregonians as we age. More information at states.aarp.org/Oregon. And thank you to the City of Eugene and to Lane County for their support as well. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I invite you to support our work by becoming an individual member, a business or community sponsor, or to volunteer to be part of a committee or even our board. You can do all these things and more at cityclubofeugene.org. Your support and engagement make these community conversations possible. Today's conversation is also made possible by the generous support of the Vista Counseling and Wellness Center. Vista Counseling strives to provide the highest level of care and service to our clients and community, helping them to remove barriers to reaching their full potential. Vista is our first ever forum sponsor for City Club, and we are very grateful for their commitment to our work. With that, I'll turn the mic over to Betsy Pownall, coordinator of today's program. Betsy.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, my name is Betsy Pownall. I'm a City Club member. This presentation is not a cry of dismay, but rather a call to action. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among youth in Oregon. While our rates in Oregon have been decreasing over the past 3 years, statistics in 2020 found youth suicide rate to be 65% greater in Lane County than the U.S. average and 21% greater than the rest of Oregon. In the communities of Junction City, Florence, and Cottage Grove, youth suicide rates were twice that for all Lane County. This crisis is especially evident in communities of color and among LGBTQ youth where the rates are much higher. Suicide is a community problem, not an individual one. To help ameliorate this situation, it is up to all of us to be involved, to know our resources, and ask the difficult question, are you okay? To a youth who may seem depressed, troubled, withdrawn, and to listen to what our youth have to say. Imagine yourself in a burning building where the only way out is to jump. That is how it feels to someone in pain. 93% of suicidal youth say they just want to end the pain. And one of the most impactful ways to respond to that pain is to say, I am here to listen. We can work on this together. And we can. Today, we're honored to have 3 representatives from Lines for Life and Youthline, a peer-to-peer suicide hotline, who will speak to us about Lines for Life Youthline, the leading suicide and substance abuse prevention nonprofit in the Northwest. Our first speaker is Dwight Holton, CEO of Lines for Life. He'll speak in general, giving us some history and context of this incredible resource. Next, Emily Moser, who directs the Youthline, will discuss how youth volunteers get involved and how they get trained and how Youthline works. And Craig Leitz is the first Youthline Deputy Director at Lines for Life, who will discuss Youthline in general. And I'm sorry if I got the order wrong. So I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you very much. And, oh, okay. No.
Good afternoon. I'm really delighted to be here with my colleagues and with all of you. I want to start by saying thank you to City Club. Civic engagement is the lifeblood of democracy, which is in turn our core guarantee for liberty in the United States. That's the way it's been since this nation was founded. It's been proven all over the world. What City Club does and what you do here as volunteers in participation on board and committees, in participation even in the meetings, is giving that lifeblood energy, and it's incredibly important. I'm delighted to be back at City Club. I've been here before in Eugene. I've spoken at City Clubs in Portland as well a number of times, but I want to thank all of you for being here and for what you do, and for those of folks listening on the radio as well. That kind of engagement is an essential part. I don't think it's ever been more important in our country than it is now. So I want to start by saying thank you, and thank you for having us. At about 4 o'clock today, something remarkable will happen. In Bend, in Portland, and on the Warm Springs Reservation in Warm Springs, about 20 young people, mostly teenagers, will sit down at a computer terminal. They'll put on a headset, and they will open up their hearts and their minds and their compassion to other young people struggling with their mental health. Some of the folks who reach out to them will be calling because they're having a really bad day. They failed a math test and they don't know how to tell mom that because it's never happened before. Others will be actively thinking about self-harm and suicide. And these young people at 4 locations in those 3 places I just mentioned will connect with these young people, listen to them, and help them find hope and a way forward. We call it the Youthline, a lifeline for young people all over the nation. And I'm very delighted to be here today with 2 remarkable people who manage and have grown and support Youthline at Lines for Life. My name is Dwight Holton, and I have the pleasure to lead this terrific nonprofit called Lines for Life. We do 3 things really well. We do, I should back up. Our mission is to prevent substance abuse and suicide and promote mental wellness. We do 3 things really well. We do crisis intervention work, we do prevention work, and we do policy and advocacy around it. We can't do it without partners and friends. I see a bunch of partners and friends in the room here, folks from Looking Glass, folks from 4J, folks who do remarkable work at Willamette High School, among others. This is the crisis of our generation. When I began this work about 10 years ago, I came to this in a funny way. I came to it from a long career in law enforcement. I was a federal prosecutor. I chased bad guys in Brooklyn, New York, and then moved out here and did it here, where I did mostly environmental crime cases before becoming United States Attorney, environmental and white-collar crime cases. I came to this field because I learned that almost everybody in the criminal justice system is there because of untreated addiction or mental health. And I developed a real passion for going upstream, and that's where Lines for Life is. I joined this organization at a time, I feel like, I've said this to Emily and Craig before, I feel like I was on a surfboard in a very quiet lagoon. Fast forward 10 years from then to now, I've just celebrated my 10th anniversary at Lines for Life, actually. And I feel like I'm riding that same surfboard in a tsunami, and it's great because the world has come to embrace, understand, and be enthusiastic about the imperative of meeting this crisis of our generation. Betsy mentioned some of the hard numbers. The reality is we lose more than 50,000 people to suicide every year in the United States. That's just about the same number of people, a little bit less, than we lost in American forces in Vietnam over 10 years. And we did it last year and the year before, and we'll do it next year. If you add in the struggle of addiction, alcohol, probably another 80,000 people. Overdose is approaching 80,000. Used to be more like 45 just a few years ago. And what we have is an enormous mental health crisis. It is the crisis of our generation. We have to embrace this. We have to meet it head on. We have to treat it like the crisis it is. We all lived through COVID, and it was a miserable, miserable crisis. But there is no vaccine for this. This takes work. This takes investment. It takes compassion. It takes innovation. And it takes full-throated response. I saw terrible, depressing numbers the other day that showed the increase in overdose deaths in Oregon compared to other states. In the last 3 years, the overdose death numbers in Oregon have increased 1,500%. 15 times what it was 3 years ago. The next closest state was Oklahoma at 900 and some odd percent. I believe the solution here is a single state agency whose sole job is the addiction and mental health crisis, where folks wake up every day and their only job is to worry about what we have done to meet that crisis, because our current state agencies who do this have too much on their plate, frankly. So we are going to take you through a little bit of a tour today about this remarkable work that our young people do. They'll start doing it at 4 o'clock today. They'll finish up around 10 o'clock. And in that time, they'll talk to dozens and dozens of young people all over the nation, helping them through their challenges. I'm delighted to be joined by Emily Moser, the director of this program, and Craig Leitz, the deputy director of this program. Emily started in this work about 10 years ago. At that time, we had 9 student volunteers. We were in a space that was 10 by 12, maybe 10 by 15 feet, and they talked to 900 or so people a year. Emily took the reins. Fast forward 10 years, we now have at any given time probably 150 student volunteers, 200 over the course of a year. They'll talk to 25,000 young people in all 50 states this year. And that is a tribute to the work of Emily and her peers, her colleagues who've gotten this done. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Emily.
Thank you, Dwight, and thank all of you for having us today. This is heartfelt, passionate work that is also hard work. And as Dwight said, there are folks in this room that lean into this hard work every day. And that really matters. That's where we make headway. So thank you. And thank you for having me. So I'm here mostly to talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of the work that we do, and hopefully help you understand why this actually works. Youthline works. Youthline and the programming around it is 3 big things. One is this call center that I'm going to talk about, the Youthline call center. One is our relationship with youth. That's the heart of what we do. Their voice matters. We elevate their voice on a regular basis when they're working with us and as they move forward into other parts of their life. And then we do a lot of public awareness raising, elevating knowledge, not only for youth, but the other folks that are working in this field. So I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about really what it looks like on the day-to-day and how we are successful. So on the Youthline, it's really important to understand no problem is too big or too small. We talk to anyone. Crisis looks different for young people than it does for adults. And the experience of having a crisis, regardless of it's a conversation around an argument with your parents, a relationship issue, or something's troubling you with schoolwork and or your peer group, all the way through this process of that my mental health may not be right. Sometimes youth don't even know their mental health isn't right, and they're experiencing a higher level of crisis and something elevates to wanting to self-harm or thinking about suicide or actively being suicidal. We talk to all of those folks. We talk to folks that range in age from 10 to 24. Just recently, we talked to a young person that they had lost, I think they were 12, had lost their gerbil and hadn't been able to find it for 2 days. and we're worried about whether or not the gerbil was starving. And so meeting and leaning into that conversation with another young person is as important as meeting and having that conversation and leaning into the young person that is being bullied or is hurting at school, is having problems at home. And then I go again to this place of active suicidality. So no problem is too big or too small. And we listen, we support, and we keep it to ourselves. So on the line, what it looks like in this space, when we talk about the Youthline Call Center, I think it's a crisis help and support line. It's all three. So sometimes what you see, if you could envision this room, what it looks like is master's level clinicians and supervisors that are kind of have, like, if you will, sort of their own command center where they are supervising and monitoring every single contact that comes our way. So the young people that do this work are supported by clinicians the entire time. They talk to them, they get up, they touch them, they help them, they message them through all of these contacts. So the young people are never alone. And our room is set up in sort of like a horseshoe. So the young people can not only talk to the supervisors, but they can talk to each other. This is a peer-to-peer young adult support framework. So it's really important that they are reaching into their own experiences along, and I'll get to training. It's not just about being a teenager, it's also about having the skills to do this work. So they can talk to each other, they can talk to their supervisors, and they can collaborate on how they support others. Sometimes I think when we think about like a crisis call center, it goes black and white for some folks, and you think about this very serious space, and you're on the phone or you're typing or texting. It's not like that. It's a youth space that was basically decorated by our youth. We have in one of the centers, we have a big Jenga game in the middle of the room. So every once in a while, if you're in my office, you hear it crash and you're like, what just happened? But it's because they are also connecting with each other. They create their own cohorts. So there's a level of support around just being in the same space together. It's colorful. It's actually joyful because they are spending so much time supporting others, even though oftentimes it's hard. And the backup support is there. So if, in fact, there are contacts where we feel or our supervisors feel like it's appropriate for supervisors to take over, they will. So we can support in a different sort of way if we need to. One of the things that's really important to know and understand about our work is that and this is our techno jargon, but we de-escalate anywhere between 96 and 100% of our contacts. What that means is that we do not engage with emergency services. We help and support young people. We offer them follow-up contacts, so we can stay with them over the course of time if need be. We can call them back, we can reach back out to them. And we also put in play for them either a self-care plan or a safety plan, which means that we're making agreements with them, an agreement that, yes, I am really having a hard time with what feels like mental health right now. I'm full of anxiety today. And I agree with you that, yeah, maybe we're going to problem solve together to come up with something that's going to work for me. What is my next steps? It's not us giving advice. It's not our team giving advice. It's working with the young person that has reached out to us to determine what is your best path forward. And oftentimes that looks like, I'm going to talk to my counselor at school. I've identified for myself that my trusted adult, the person that I trust to talk to about what's hurting me the most, is my football coach or my drama teacher or my parent. So for us, it's really about helping to identify who those supports are, what that looks like. Sometimes it's Planned Parenthood, sometimes it's the Trevor Project, which is another support line, and sometimes it's as simple as, have you thought about talking to your mom about this? And it's another youth that's giving that, opening it up to that sort of conversation. Dwight and I joke about this all the time. We both have lived through teenagers, and we've survived teenagers is probably a better word for it, right? But the idea being that oftentimes as a parent or somebody that is an adult that doesn't fall into that trusted category, and even sometimes if you do, when I say, have you thought about talking to your counselor about this? Or have you thought about talking to your dad about this? Is totally different from when another young person says, I talked to my dad about things like this. Have you ever thought about that? And if it's not your dad, who is it? And that's exactly what our young people do on the lines. So I just think for a minute. Yeah. We work really hard to, throughout this process, really elevate youth voice in the process. So the young people that volunteer for us spend a lot of time helping us through what we need to know about young people at any given point in time. We are a youth development and mentoring program as well, and that's where this falls in. With this work, all of our youth go through over 65 hours of training. The training is done within a smaller cohort, so they build community, or the community starts with the training. The training includes some certification in some nationally recognized programming. I don't know, they're going into it. Something like Youth Mental Health First Aid is a nationally recognized training for these types of challenges that we see on the lines. And they spend time doing role plays. They practice. They get a lot of support in the process, and then do several listening shifts before they ever take any contact on the line. So they are fully prepared to do this work, or we feel very strongly that they are fully prepared to do this work. And they tell us so as well. They tell us, yes, as going through this process, I have learned more about myself. I've gained skills that I can use not only when I'm on the lines, but in my schools, in my community, with my family. They joke with us about how they youth lined their mom or their sister, because they've learned these very, very important skills around listening and supporting. And in addition to that, as a result of building out these skills, we also build confidence and a true understanding of mental health and well-being. So the stigma around being able to reach out for help, and the stigma around feeling uncomfortable around your own, like, what is mental health? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Goes away because of the training and because of the experience. So through this process, this youth development process, we ask our volunteers to stay with us for a year. They work one shift a week during that time frame, and most of them stay longer than a year. They stay they often leave to go on to do different things. They go on to go to work, or they go on to go to school. And what we've also found is around 50% of the youth that volunteer with us move into the fields of behavioral health and social sciences and teaching. So they carry these skills with them as they move into the next chapter of their life. And they're confident doing so. So that's another really important aspect of our work. It's really about the work we're doing with the youth that volunteer for us, and the work that we support on the lines. We have a whole nother body of work that I'm going to pass. Craig specializes in our work around education and outreach and awareness raising. So I will leave it at that and move. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Again, I will echo the thanks that you all are here today and those of you who are listening. So Dwight told you that Lines for Life does three things really well: crisis intervention, prevention, and advocacy, and Youthline does that too. So Emily just told you about the crisis intervention component, where 365 days a year from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., a youth can call, text, or chat with us, and they will get another youth. If they call us outside of those hours, they will get a specially trained adult. I want to tell you a little bit more about our prevention work. So we have an education and outreach component of our work where we do a variety of things. The intention of that work is to, of course, raise awareness of Youthline. We want youth to know about us when they're struggling. We also want to destigmatize conversations around mental health. Mental health is taboo in our society, in our communities, and so we want to talk to youth and let them know that it's okay to talk about their mental health. We also want them to know that it's okay to reach out for help when they are struggling. And so help seeking is a really important thing that we talk about with youth, and we make sure they know that it is okay to do. When they are reaching out for help, we want them to know that they have a trusted adult in their life who they might go to. We know that that's one of our protective factors against suicide for our youth, is if they know who one of those trusted adults are. It might not be a parent, which is okay. It might be a grandparent. It might be an older cousin. It might be a coach, a school counselor, a religious leader. We just want them to know who that trusted adult is. And then additionally, we want to give them some skills, right? We want to talk to them about how they can take care of themselves when they're struggling. We want to make sure that they know about resources, including Youthline, but others as well. So the way that we do that is through 4 areas of work. The first is social media. So we know that our youth are online all the time. If you too are online, or if you have youth in your life who are online, have them follow the Youthline. On Instagram and Facebook, we are at the Youthline. They can find us. We post regularly, and we want to make sure that we are showing up in youth in their feeds. And we're talking about some of those things that I just mentioned to you, right? We're talking about mental health. We're talking about self-care. We're talking about reaching out for help when they need it. Additionally, we have a set of complementary promotional materials that we offer to schools and community-based organizations. For those of you who are in the room, there is a sampling of them on the table here, so check those out on your way out. Take those for youth in your life. However, if you are listening in, go to our website, theyouthline.org, and find our materials and see if those are something that would be beneficial to the youth in your life. Another thing that's really important is being present in the community. So we will be at community events across the state of Oregon, so youth either A, know about Youthline and can reach out to us if they need support, but then also so they can volunteer with us. If they live in the Portland Metro, if they live in the Bend Metro, if they live in Warm Springs, we need our youth to help us to provide that peer-to-peer support that is a hallmark of the Youthline. And then finally, we just have to do our work with schools, right? We know that youth spend much of their time in schools, and so our school partners and collaborators are essential in this work. We have colleagues from Bethel School District and Eugene 4J here in the room, and we work closely with them. The work that we do with schools is twofold. One is we go into classrooms and provide complementary mental health lessons for students, lessons that align with state standards around mental health, but ensuring that middle schoolers and high schoolers know about how to cope with stress when they're struggling. We talk to high schoolers about suicide awareness, so if they or a friend are struggling, they have some skills and resources, but can also reach out to us if they need it. Additionally, on the policy side of the work that Youthline does, in Oregon we have this amazing law called Addie's Act, which requires every school district to have a suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention plan, and have that posted on their website. So if a community member wants to know how our schools are going to be prepared and respond if a student is struggling, then there's a plan posted on their website. And so historically, we've had staff who support school districts in putting those plans together and then having them posted on their website. For many of the districts in the state, Youthline is one of the components of that plan. And so our work that we do with schools is really essential and something that we have in an ongoing way. Emily told you a lot about the types of topics that youth reach out to us about, and so one of the things that I wanted to share with you, which you'll hear, is the top 8 issues that our youth are reaching out to the Youthline about. So you can hear what it is that youth are talking to us about. The first is mental health concerns, which might be anxiety or depression. followed by family issues, a fight with a sibling, a parent, or other things that they are experiencing in the home. Loneliness and isolation follows, and that is something that we saw a wild increase of during the pandemic, right? That when youth were required to stay at home, they were feeling really lonely and isolated, and that continues as our third most frequent contact. Relationship issues is next, followed by friend issues, right? That our youth are young. They don't have a lot of life experience where they've navigated interpersonal relationships like we as adults have. So that first breakup, that first big fight with a friend is really, it's a big deal to them. And so we want to make sure that they get support around that. The next is, obviously, as we've talked about, suicide is what folks call us about. But you'll hear that's 6. Of the top 8, that's number 6. So as Emily said, no problem is too big or too small. Number 7 is academic stressors, so we know school is tough. And then the 8th is self-injury or self-harm. So one of the things that we said we would do is tell you some ideas for how to support youth in your life. And so as I mentioned, a protective factor is a trusted adult. So if you have youth in your life, maybe you're that trusted adult, or you're asking them who that trusted adult is. Also feeling connected at home and at school or in other parts of their community are really important protective factors. And so those are things that you might do as well. If you have young people in your life, are you talking to them about mental health? Are you asking them how they're doing? I think it was mentioned that some of those hallmark signs are being withdrawn or being quiet, making big changes. But sometimes it also shows up as youth who are acting kind of wildly different on the other side of the spectrum. They're really escalated and excited and outgoing and in a way that they aren't normally. So any of those changes in behavior, it's important to check in with youth and see how they're doing. And then just so essentially, if we have not said it enough, talking about mental health, right? Naming that mental health is as important as physical health. It's as normal as physical health. If we broke our leg, we would go to the doctor. If we're struggling with our mental health, we should seek support for that too. So I invite you in the ways that I shared to possibly get involved in our outreach or prevention work that we do at Youthline. And I'm going to hand it back over to Dwight to wrap us up.
I want to quickly get to questions. So if you're thinking about questions, please do so, because we're interested in your insights and your inquiry. I do want to say that part of what's really compelling about Youthline is that it's part of our broader system of support that we at Lines for Life are a part of. In addition to answering Youthline, we answer about 35 other crisis lines around Oregon. It includes the state's alcohol and drug helpline, a military helpline, a racial equity support line. The real centerpiece, though, is the 988 line. Right now, most of you, at least in your possession, have a connection to help. Your phone is a connection to help 24/7, 365 by simply dialing or texting to 988. You'll find a trained counselor on the other end of the phone ready to support you through your very worst day. Most of those calls in Oregon land at Lines for Life. We have a partner in Northwest Human Services that answers calls in Marion and Polk County, but we answer about 95% of those calls. 988 has been really a powerful innovation. This is a year and a half old service, almost 2 years old now, 2 years in July, where we've seen a tremendous increase in contacts. We saw about a 40% growth in the first year. It's leveled out some, but we went from 40,000 contacts to about 65,000 contacts, 45,000 to 65,000 contacts. But I think even more important than that is the work that having 988 is doing to tear down the wall of stigma. I cannot tell you how many people I've met. This is a feature of my job that I had not anticipated. Parents, loved ones, sisters, brothers who lost a loved one to either addiction or mental health, who tell me I lost my loved one to stigma. They didn't feel like they could be that, they didn't want to be that person reaching out for help. With 988, the nation, the state, and the community have said it is okay to struggle, and here is help. No one thinks twice about calling 911 if you're an offender bender or if your house catches on fire. There's no stigma, there's no, oh, I'll be embarrassed. By establishing 988, we're helping tear down that stigma that has been such a hurdle to getting people connected to help, and it's pretty wonderful. So with that, I'll stop, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. We'll begin our question and answer session in just a moment, but first I'd like to thank the business and in-kind sponsors whose support helps to make City Club possible. Thank you to our gold sponsors, Network Charter School, Hirschner Hunter, LLC, Evans, Elder Brown, and Subert, and new this week, Hudson Dental. Thank you, Hudson Dental. Thank you also to our in-kind sponsors, KRVM 91.9 Radio, Alpha IT, Dotson's Photography, and Kid Sports. Also, a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station, KLCC FM 89.7, for airing City Club programs Monday nights at 7 p.m. For those listening at home right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC, and we love that you are here. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived on KLCC, as well as on our YouTube channel and as podcasts. We'll take a brief break before returning for the last part of our program, where you'll be invited to ask our speakers questions. Thank you. Welcome back to the City Club of Eugene and our program on peer-to-peer support. We're in our question and answer session now, and we're lucky to have Bethel School Superintendent Dr. Craig Sproles here to ask the first question.
So thank you for bringing attention to this really important topic. And I have a brief statement to make and to be able to thank some folks before I direct a question to the Lines of Life and Youth Life team. I'm Craig Sproles. I'm the superintendent in Bethel. And we talk a lot about resiliency in Bethel and building up sources of strength and identifying trusted adults and the importance of that. And even though we spend a lot of time doing that, we also experienced a tragedy in Bethel. In 1 week period, we had a middle school student pass away from a suspected drug overdose, and we had a student die by suicide that same exact week, and a freshman in high school. So Bethel's a relatively small school district. We have 5,000 students, and everyone knows each other in the neighborhood. And it profoundly rocked us to our knees in that moment. And it forced us to really think about what are the systems of supports that we have. And we were also profoundly embraced by our community. So that's the statement I just wanted to make just for a minute, that we had trauma intervention program of Lane. They showed up the next day with a whole host of therapists to be able to, we had a community gathering of high school students in the library to be able to process that. We also had Youth Era support us in the moment, but also for weeks afterwards, because when someone dies by suicide, the in-the-moment care is really important, but so is the long-term processing of that loss. And it's something we're still processing 3 or 4 months later. We had Hoots, specifically the Whitebird team, help, and they continue to help and show up. We had therapy dogs. We had Oregon Healing Collective working with Oregon Health Authority to be able to provide resources. And we had Lines for Life provide posters and supports and to be able to forward this as an ongoing support. So as someone who is leading a district, I can tell you the mental health crisis that we're seeing in our students is acute. It's a little frustrating at times that I saw our community rally around this thing called COVID and really think about how is COVID impacting our communities. And I can tell you that the mental health crisis is more profoundly impacting our kids than COVID impacted kids. So we're having students show up with extreme needs that we are struggling to meet. And we have lots and lots of different people who are helping us do that. So that was a long-winded question. That wasn't a question at all. So I will, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to say it's all different parts of that fabric that are woven together to be able to support up and love a community and love a student and love a family and love a group of teachers going through this. And it touches me deeply that we were able to do that and continue to do that. And I just wanted to thank our community for that. Now to my question for the team. One of the things that we're having a difficult time is recruiting mental health professionals to be able to work in our school systems. In Bethel, with our Bethel Health Center, we've greatly increased our number of therapists that we have and counselors that we have, and our wait list is longer now than when we've added, how many, Brooke? 4 or 5 new therapists just in the last year, and our wait list is longer now than when we started this process. So I'm wondering for the team how we can incorporate some of the things that are being learned through Youthline and Lines for Life to be able to create a vibrant CTE program where we can train up high school students to earn a certificate to go on to Lane or go on to U of O, the Balmer program, and then come back and serve our communities.
So first, Dr. Sproul, let me say that my heart goes out to you and Brooke in the district for dealing with this. It's incredibly hard. It's incredibly painful. Just about exactly 5 years ago, we lost a colleague at Lines for Life. You know, here we are, a suicide prevention organization. And Lauren was a good friend, and it's miserable. We're the poster child for the fact that this can happen anywhere. And it doesn't matter if you have wonderful programming in place. Reaching everybody is really hard. So, and I share your vision that we embrace this challenge the way we embrace COVID, because this is, as I said, the crisis of our generation. There's no vaccine. We got to work, and we need everybody to help do it and support it. Workforce is a huge challenge. I have good news for you. Almost half of our kids go into this field or as educators. And so Youthline is certainly helping. I have been pressuring both state and federal officials to look at targeted loan repayment effort around behavioral health. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Becerra, was at Lines for Life in May of last year, and I quickly polled my staff on what their student loans look like. I sent out a little doodle poll, essentially. I have never had as big a response on anything. Like if I had said there was a free car for the first 50 people, I got 100 responses in less than 6 hours out of the 200 people who worked for us at the time. Never gotten that kind of response. And what I learned was, of those folks who responded, the average loan debt is $70,000. So Little Lines for Life, we have $7 million of student loan debt. So I think accelerated student loan repayment for behavioral health would help get people here. So I've been urging folks to do that. But the Career and Technical Education Initiative is a great one. We, our lines, we now have a Lines for Life call center at McDaniel High School in Portland Public as of 2 weeks ago. And I'm convinced, which is on the east side of Portland, it's closer to communities of color, frankly. I'm convinced that that's going to help us in that workforce there. Same thing with our Warm Springs call center. Our Warm Springs and Bend folks are seeing, there's lots of the kids who are in those two call centers are kids for whom college felt like a reach. We're giving them skills, confidence, enthusiasm, and vision, and putting them in pretty regular contact with college professors and students in a way that's making college feel more doable. So I think we can talk about whether or not there's something we could do to help, but I think engaging your students in the mental health in mental health opportunities through your CTE is the way to plant the seeds. Get them to Balmer. We're talking to Balmer too. We had Kate from the new director of Balmer at Lines for Life very recently. For those of you who don't know, the Balmer family made an enormous contribution to the University of Oregon to build a special center at the former Concordia campus in Northeast Portland to build a special program for educating youth mental health professionals at the bachelor's level. It's a tremendous need. So I think there are pieces there we can move on, but we all got to move on it.
Next question, Roz.
Several questions. My name is Roz Stein, and I'm a City Club member. Thank you. It was really great to hear this. Thank you very much for coming. I was just wondering if there's any way you have to measure success.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we measure success in several different ways. So we talked about having 3 different sort of arms to our programming with Youthline. One is around the call center itself. So our biggest measurement of success around that is our capacity to de-escalate a contact, which means that we are helping young people put a self-care plan in place or a safety plan in place, and we are not reaching out to law enforcement or other emergency services to do so. So because these folks are in crisis, it's really about making sure that in that moment that they are safe and they have a plan moving forward that works for them. So the de-escalation rate is one of the biggest measures on the line itself. when we're looking at our youth development and mentoring program, we look at what our young people are learning. So we do things like pre and post tests around knowledge, and we check in with them because we're a youth development program. We check in with each of our youth about once per quarter and are talking to them about how this has changed or how this is impacting their life in general. And when they leave the program, we do exit interviews where they tell us how much it's changed their life. They're using words like life-saving or life-changing. And they tell us about this thought of moving into the behavioral health field, that they have gained confidence around that. So we measure all of those pieces as well. Oh, and then lastly, in the work that we do in schools, we talk to teachers and we get feedback from them around what the lessons look like. And we also do like a little knowledge test at the end of, to get some feedback from the students around what they learned during those sessions. So,
I'll just add that I think our growth at the Youth Line is a hallmark of success. The fact that we talked to 1,000 people 10 years ago and 25,000 a year now doesn't mean that the crisis is 25 times greater than it was. What it means is we're reaching a much broader swath of the young people who are experiencing crisis. So I think that's an important point. And as we reach those folks, the young people help these people do, the people that reaching out to us do, is develop coping skills. So these guys have helped me understand that the pressure that young people feel around relationships, around academics, is physiologically the very same as the pressure I feel about meeting payroll or paying my mortgage. The difference is I have 58 years of coping skills. So as our young people help these now 25,000 people a year develop coping skills, that's an enduring upstream success. I want to come back to Dr. Spruill for something as well. But I think part of, with your short Sources of Strength program, why don't you guys bring a field trip up to Youth Line? Because then they'll see that this is not just something that can be a club at school, but is a profession. Wow. And we'd love to show them around. Because we think that kind of engagement that we have with our Youth Liners is what makes them interested in it. Frankly, it's what opens the vision for being able to do this long term.
There's not a center in Eugene, right?
We do not have a Youth Line center here. We'd love to someday.
Yeah.
So one of our big allies in town is Judge Ann Aiken, whom many of you probably know, and she's on our board and very engaged. She and I worked very closely together when I was the United States Attorney for Oregon, and she was the Chief District Judge for the federal court in Oregon, and she'd love for us to be here. So
yeah,
it's on the to-do list.
And what is one more thing? And what is your funding? I didn't get understood.
Good question. We're open for business and open for help. I don't want to compete with the public broadcasting station. The state funds about a third of the cost of the Youth Line, and we raise the rest. We have some tremendous partners. The folks at Les Schwab have really taken to this issue. The Taco Bell owners for a huge swath of Taco Bells nationally have been really interested. I think they're going to move on, and they've got other projects they want to support now, but they really helped plant this mighty oak of a tree. And there are other folks as well, a bunch of foundation work, the Marie Lanfrom Trust, and others.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
But we need help. It's
Yes.
funded at about
Yeah.
a third. We have steady funding for about a third of what we do. Youthline.org.
Thank you. Thank you, Roz.
Thank you.
Karin Knudsen, City Club member. Thank you all for being here today and sharing your work with us. I really appreciated the thoughts that you shared around prevention and also things that all of us in community can do to help. And I'm wondering if you would offer a little bit of coaching to our City Club members and also listening audience around this idea of being a trusted adult and what that interface looks like, how you would advise for adults to be able to help engage. I think many of us would think of ourselves as trusted adults, but sometimes people can also use a little bit of coaching and suggestion. So I'm curious what you think.
It's a great question. As the former federal prosecutor and not clinician in the room, I'm going to hand the microphone off.
So I think the most important thing that we can do as adults is, quite frankly, taking away all of the judgment, all of our experience, and leaning into learning more about what the experience of the young person is. I've done it. Like I said, I survived teenagers, and it's so easy to say that you'll get over it. Oh, this is your first breakup. You're going to have so many more relationships. And instead, what we need to do is lean into the conversation and listen. Listen, ask questions, build rapport in such a way that means that it's not about us. It's not about our experience, our knowledge, and all those coping skills that we have gained. It's about helping a young person understand that I am here for you. And so when you have these conversations, it's the technical skills, if you will, are things like asking open-ended questions. How are you feeling about that? Leaning into what their hurt feels like. So if somebody says, I'm so sad that my friend won't talk to me, that your response is, boy, that must really hurt you. I am so sorry that that's how you feel. So leaning into the emotions of the other person, acknowledging and validating what it is that they're feeling. Oftentimes as adults, we tend to dismiss that because it doesn't fit into our world anymore in the same sort of way. So those are two really big things that I would say. The other thing that I would do is think about the young people in your life and how you talk to them and how you relate to them now. All of us could come up with some ways that perhaps maybe we have passed judgment around what they're doing or who they are. And think about it from the perspective is that I have something that I can learn from you. So help with destigmatizing just by being in the space from where they are instead of where we are. Lastly, and then I'll pass to you to add more, is that I have also learned that oftentimes when you're in this space where you may be having difficult conversations, it's really hard sometimes to go eyeball to eyeball with somebody and look them in the face and talk about these things. You don't have to. You can lean into a conversation when you're doing something else. So one of my strategies when my boys were younger, they're both baseball players, is that we would go into the backyard and play catch for a little while. And just nothing, no talking, no anything. And after a while, it would be like, how was your day? Or, I learned that this happened at school. How did that affect you, kind of thing. So meet them on their terms, whatever that means. It doesn't necessarily have to be baseball, but there are understanding and determining what those pieces are, and then being in that space with them and creating a safe space where there is potentially more of a willingness to talk.
Yeah, I think I would just add some of the things that we talked about earlier, right? Destigmatizing mental health. Tell youth in your life that you came to this presentation today. Hey, do you know about Youthline? Share the resources with them and say it's okay for you to reach out for help, right? Saying that to them, sometimes they just need to hear that. I think also modeling is really important, right? So if you're really stressed out, if you're having a hard time, say that to them. Like, yeah, sometimes I get really stressed out and I feel like I can't, put those feelings down. Does that ever happen to you? What do you do when you feel that way? I sometimes go for a walk, or I'll call a friend who I, trust, or I might talk to your parent, right? That if you're able to model the ways in which you have mental health struggles and how you address those are then techniques that the youth can use as well. And again, hopefully, if you're saying, I have a hard time sometimes, when they're having a hard time, they can come to you as well.
Thank you.
Wendy.
I'm Wendy Wheeler Coltrane, been a member for many years of City Club. My question is about, actually it came from Roz speaking up, is what is needed to bring your program to Eugene? Yeah.
So, what it takes to launch a call center partnership is community support and engagement, so that we know that folks here are interested in it. It requires, these have to be very locally tailored. So the Bend call center looks very different from the Warm Springs call center, which looks very different from the Portland call center. In fact, the two Portland call centers are quite different. So we need that local advice and engagement. It takes funding because we need a couple of staff, three staff is what it is really. You need someone to run the thing and do the relationship building, someone for clinical pieces and someone for the outreach piece. And then it takes a real engagement and partnership with youth serving organizations, starting with schools. It's funny because we are actually growing right now. Emily and I are headed to Hawaii in a week to talk to partners there. The youth line is staffed 4 to 10 p.m. each day. By being in Hawaii, we'll add 2 to 3 hours, depending on whether the time of year because of daylight savings, to that. And we know that as we add hours, we see exponential growth in contacts. We'll be going to the East Coast as well. So there are about 350,000 young people who call 988 every year. We would like to have capacity to talk to all of them, or any of them who would like to talk to a peer instead. So the centerpiece of that is building capacity in Oregon. Building capacity east and west is there as well. It's probably about, once you're up and running in the first year, it's about $350,000 or $400,000, and it grows a little bit from that each year, but not a ton. It's not a huge investment, but it's not money that's lying around either. So I'll give you the direct answer as I can.
Thank you. You mentioned that youth are online all the time. I'm not that old. I'm a millennial. I wasn't online all the time. It wasn't part of my childhood. And some people attribute this online society and the lack of real life interaction to the mental health crisis that you've articulated today. What do you think of that argument? And if you think there's any truth to it, how do we manage kids' online lives and real life lives, understanding that the internet isn't going back in the box?
That's a really big question. I think you will get folks on both sides of that issue who says it hurts and says it helps. And I think it does both, right? When I hear some of our school partners talk about some of the things around online bullying that youth are experiencing on social media, it is wild, something I would never imagine. But there are a lot of youth who also find community and connection, right? Discord, if you all have heard of Discord, youth in your life are on Discord, and there are many online communities there where people are finding connection. And so I think like any other component of your youth's life, it's talking to them about it, asking them what's going on social media, not getting too invasive because then there's the risk of having them not tell you enough, but just acknowledging that that's a part of their life and that's something that is where they are. Again, as I said, we are at the Youth Line on Instagram. We're exploring over time additional social media places to be, but just knowing, what are the resources that they can follow, encouraging them to follow those as well so they're coming across their feeds. One thing that I'll tell you about really quickly is an innovative program that we have at Youthline called Safe Social Spaces, where we have some crisis intervention staff who are going into online communities and reaching out to people who are posting about self-injury and suicide and offering them support. We do think it's one of its kind in the country, and that not anyone is doing that proactive crisis intervention where we're going out and we see someone who is reaching out for help in a passive way, right? If I were to post about self-injury or suicide online, probably I want someone to respond to me. And so we have staff who are doing that. But I think just acknowledging that social media is there, youth are going to be online, and like any other part of their life, how do you engage with them on that, and also if there are any protective factors around just making sure you know what's going on for them, because it's different out there than it was for others of us.
The only thing I would add to that is back in the day when we would go into the classroom before this was a huge issue online, we would talk about media literacy, and we would talk about commercials, and we would talk about the type of information that was fed to you via a commercial. Now what we need is social media literacy. It's the same sort of conversation as folks that, again, are in schools or as parents and grandparents or trusted adults, that we're having those conversations as well. I mean, how do you use social media, and what are the positive aspects of it as well?
That's all the time we have for questions today. Please join me in thanking our panel. This has been our February 23rd conversation at the City Club of Eugene. A special thanks to the staff of Lane Transit District, who hosted the Industry for Educators class, and to Rosen Aviation, which hosted the class this week. At Rosen, teachers heard all about the kinds of engineering, programming, and project design that go into airplane instruments and screens. And next week, the class will visit the Terrell Group to learn about careers in marketing. On Monday, February 26th, the Eugene City Council will focus on the issue of safe parking and safe tent sites at their meeting and public hearing, so be sure to make your voice heard in person or via email. Next Friday, City Club will be back right here at the Maple Room for a conversation on campaign finance reform, suddenly a hot topic in Salem. Until then.